I'm Dan Baer with California Survival School and survivallife.com. Thanks for coming out today, guys. We have a good class for you. Today what we're going to cover is what most people would consider the ultimate or most necessary survival skill. What we're going to cover today is friction fire. As far as getting these materials prepped, I'm going to make sure I have a nice stable platform for my board to be on. I want to make sure it's not going to be moving and rocking on me. And then I'm going to notch in a space on here and make sure that it's set up. If I didn't have a knife, I would just use a rock. So that's fine to use right now. I'm just going to use a little sharp corner of a rock to kind of notch in a space. What I'm trying to do is get a space deep enough to where my spindle kind of sets there, and when I get going slowly, it stays in place until it kind of burns in its own, works in its own way. I don't want to do it too deep, because if I'm going too deep, I'm going to waste fuel. So it needs to be a nice balance between making it deep enough to where this has a place to set, but not so deep that it's gonna waste all my fuel that I need, and I'll have to start over. I've got my foot braced. I got my fireboard parallel or perpendicular to where I'm set up. I want to make sure that I have this. Your body mechanics are huge here to get this fire. There's many ways to do this. There's only one way to do it right, okay? And if you want to get fire, you're going to do it one way. You're going to get braced up on this board so that the board is stable. You're going to make sure that your body is set up in a way to where you can get the mechanics to run right. Generally, that means getting a knee up over the board. You're going to need to make sure the most important thing, the thing that is the difference between you getting fire or not, honestly, the majority of the time it comes down to where your wrist locks. Everybody forgets to do this, and those who learn friction fire, those who are successful, have figured out how to do this. They make sure that this bone in here, this wrist, is locked in against their shin. The better you can do this, the more efficient you're going to be, the less energy you waste, and the more chance of success you'll have. This is really the key. If I'm going to stress one thing that everybody messes up on when they're trying to learn this, and it's not emphasized in survival shows or in other videos that you'll find on the net, most often they skip this. Lock in that wrist against your shin. You'll notice I'm not sitting here on my knee, my shoulder, isn't down here. My arm, I'm having as much arm hugging the outside of my leg, acting as a brace as possible. When my wrist comes off my leg like this, what I get is a bunch of shaking when I'm bowing back and forth. And then when I lock that in, it's stable. So having that outer lock is huge. This is what will get you friction fire. So make sure you're locking things in. So once I have that locked in, once I have all my materials set up, I'm ready to go. I did mention you don't want to use sap on the bottom. You won't get fire. A little bit of tree sap on the top, like a pinhead sized piece, can keep the top of your spindle from burning. You won't have to reshape it. So there's an expert tip, little pro tip. You want to get a little bit of sap or boogers or whatever you have that even some green plant material in there can help slow down. It can help slow down the friction process and keep things from burning. So now I'm set up. You want to make sure, be extremely careful that if you are using a little bit of sap or something on the top, that you're not using so much it's going to fall down to the bottom where your board is, because that's bad news bears. Okay, so I'm braced in here. My wrist is locked in there extremely well. I'm getting my fingers so they're not going to wrap down towards the spindle. You will generally want to handhold this piece that's tougher than your other materials. That way it wears down less. And now I've got my leg back so that I can use the full length of my arm without running into anything. I don't want to be doing these short little strokes that waste energy and aren't efficient and won't build up heat fast. I want long strokes. Right now I'm just mating the board, so I'm not even going to try for fire. I'm just trying to get the spindle to stay in one place. Okay, so all I did right there was just let it go long enough to where I can see it's heating up. There was a little bit of smoke you probably missed on the camera, and that doesn't really matter right now because I'm not trying to ignite anything. What I want is that fine black dust there, and I want to feel like the spindle's mating. All right. So we'll get that started, get a burn-in going. You want to make sure I'm steady enough to get a little bit of smoke to make sure things are staying stable. And once they are, I'm going to cut a notch. So get a notch cut in there. I want this notch to be nice and thin. It kind of widens out as you dig into the wood, but that's more the side getting blown out than anything else from the spindle burning it out. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a really narrow notch. Should be a little pizza slice right through the center of your burn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this spindle up here on my hard surface. If I pound this on the dirt absorbs all the vibration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bow and I'll use it like a hammer and start knocking out a wedge. Keeping the wedge nice and tight. If your wedge is too big, you're going to end up with a side that can't hold your spindle in place when it's spinning, and it'll just blow out the side of your board and you got to start over. All right, so I have a notch that's all set up. It's going right to the middle of my board. It's right in the sweet spot where everything can mix, the dust, the oxygen, and the heat can touch that fuel source. So I'm getting it set up, getting it flat. Got my spindle mated with my board, meaning it's going to stay in the same place when I run it. We'll double check to make sure they're still sticking, and then we're going to crank out a fire here. Before you light the match, this is all this is doing. All I'm doing is lighting the primitive match here. Before I do that, I need to have a nice tinder bundle. So I pulled up some grass that's going to be really fine. I've got some finer stuff in the middle there. We're going to use that for making our fire. There's no point in getting this coal, which is basically the equivalent of a cigarette, if I don't have a tinder bundle to blow it into a fireball. Just get that groove set in there deeper. Go slow and make sure it's working its way back in. Get that nice smoke. Use the full length of your bow. Keep your wrist steady. And if we have a coal, that'll keep smoking. If it keeps smoking, there's no need to rush. It'll keep burning. This stuff, seems to be going. The fibers are a little bit big on this stuff, but I think we have a coal. And if we do, there's no rush. Just like a cigarette, I'll keep going. So now that I have my coal all set, I need to make sure I can transfer it into my bundle. Got a lot of wind here, so I gotta be extra careful. A good bundle is made of super fine plant material. This isn't even that fine, but it'll work. You want a good bundle of tight material that we can still oxygenate, but the fibers are close enough together to where it's not going to. Here's some other nice ground up grass. We want the fibers tight enough. Man, it's windy. We'll just stick that whole leaf in there. Might as well. All right, baby. We got our coal in there. We're gonna try to blow it into flame real quick. So I'm gonna wrap it up like a baby in some superfine fibers and let it oxygenate. And the wind's not even, I don't even have to blow this. It's already a fire.